Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Wolok, my partner in crime as always, Vasili, Gianarakos, back. How's it going, buddy?
Doing well. Sucked I couldn't be on last week with Jim, but happy you both had a great episode. It was an awesome listen.
Yeah.
Happy to be back for this week. Even though there's still not a lot to discuss for
No.
Flyers topics and hockey news in general, just with the
Uh,
dead season. We actually managed to put together some interesting points just to bring up in conversation. So we think it'll be a pretty fun show. But yeah, should be a good one. How have you been doing this week so far?
Doing all right, man. Doing all right. Not too bad. Yeah, the episode with Jim did well, and it's a fun episode. The guy can talk, so it's like I said, you just ask him a question, he goes off. And yeah, as far as like today's show, I do notice that like a lot of the, I guess, competition, they tend to bring up like all these like what ifs and all these like other off topics. I'll tell you guys now, listening, I have zero interest in any of that stuff.
We're just gonna
Uh,
talk hockey.
yeah,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about the Flyers' current team, and that will be the case pretty much majority of the time. I'm not
Unless
really
it's
trying
like
to.
Olympics or something, then we'll get into that
Yeah,
shit.
well then that's topical. I mean, like I don't want to go off and start talking about the past and shoulda, woulda, couldas, and all this stuff like that. It's like
What movie was good this week and
yeah.
that type of stuff,
I
eh?
don't care. That is not why I don't feel like that's why people listen to these podcasts. And like you said, we are in the dead,
Yeah.
dead period for about what?
I
3 more weeks? Yeah,
about
about
that,
3 more
yeah.
weeks.
Probably till like the end of August. I would say, hey, I can realize that probably people aren't listening to my opinions for this podcast to hear things about like music or movies or really anything. Probably hockey, right? So I think the fact that we stick to hockey more often than not and to the Flyers in general, because we are a Flyers
Yeah,
centric podcast, I think our listeners appreciate that. So we'll try our best in this one, even though light topics to
keep it
kind of stick to
interesting.
yeah,
Yeah.
keep it interesting with the Flyers topics that we have kind of come up with. So yeah.
Yeah. And I did get somewhat of the assistance of ChatGPT this week. Um, Not just for topics, but I tend to use ChatGPT a lot. So I like every now and then I'll go on this like run of just asking Flyers questions just to because it's not giving me an opinion, right? It's just kind of
Okay.
pulling
This yeah.
together. Well, it's pulling together the consensus into like lists essentially.
Amongst the internet, like from
Right.
whatever data it can
Yeah.
find. Yeah, yeah.
Right. So
Those AI tools are cool like that. I feel like I don't use ChatGPT as often at my work. We actually have like an official AI tool that was built. So like
okay.
I'm at work and like people will say, "Oh, you should use the AI tool for this or use the AI tool for that." So I feel like, as you're working through it and using AI more often and often, you're kind of getting used to like whatever it spits back out at you and then kind of
Yeah.
adjusting because it's not perfect, right? So
No, definitely not. I mean, if you really know a topic like really, really well, and you go deep with ChatGPT, you will find a lot of
oh,
mistakes.
for
Like
sure.
the
Yeah.
Flyers thing. Oh my God, they reference stuff. I'm like, this is 12 months outdated. I'm like, this is not relevant at
John
all anymore.
Tortorella still the head
Right,
coach, things like that.
exactly. The like mix in prospects that I have like zero chance of making the NHL
Got
like within the
traded
next two
already.
years. Right, ones that were here like 2 years ago will be on the list and um so I don't take it that seriously, but I do find it interesting. If it's like statistical analysis, it's best, right? If you're just giving it straight up like data to siphon through, it's really good, and that's how we're going to use it today. Okay, let's get into the usual opener and then we'll get into topics. So, just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe, hit the notification bell for notification, get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes and make sure to give us a rating and a follow as well. If you have not done that so far, please do so. That is the best way to support this show. If you're watching right now and you haven't hit the like button, please do so. We truly, truly appreciate it, and it's what really helps our show grow. Also, shout out to our sponsors, Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Make sure to go get yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Make sure to go check out Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Summit Public Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. They will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company and make sure you get the best claim possible. Again, Summit Public Adjusters 215-752-0560. And I also want to give a brief shout out to our partner, sportspider.com. Guys, if you're tired of searching multiple websites for sports news, sportspider.com has you covered. They collect the latest articles, videos, and podcasts from around the web and organize them by your favorite teams. If you want to stay as up to date on our Philadelphia Flyers or the NHL in general, make sure to check out sportspider.com. The link is in the description of both the video and audio versions of this show. Sportspider.com. Our stuff is pinned at the top. Okay. Starting off the show, I want to talk about getting off to a strong start this year. And does it really matter? What are kind of our expectations for this year? Again, this is pretty early conversation because we haven't even been through training camp. We don't know exactly what the roster is going to look like. We don't know what the roster is going to look like for other teams as well. There are no key injuries that have kind of popped up yet outside of the Forrester and Ristolainen, I guess situations. We don't even know if they're going to be out necessarily. But we don't really know, but we do know the schedule, and we did go through the opening of it a little bit. I'm going to go through the games that the Flyers have in the beginning of the season once again.
Tough to
Uh,
start for sure.
yeah, and then we'll talk about like what our expectations are for the beginning of the season. So the first game, October 9th, it's at Florida. October 11th at Carolina. October 13th, back home against Florida. October 16th, home, Winnipeg. 18th, Minnesota at home. 20th, Seattle at home. The 23rd, Ottawa at Ottawa. 25th, Islanders at home. 28th, Pittsburgh at home. 30th, Nashville at home. And then we'll just do November 1st, Toronto at home, and then I guess the second as well, Calgary at home. So definitely some difficult games peppered in there, but not a ton of high-end competition in there too. It's really just the first kind of week and a half of the season is kind of tough with Florida twice, Carolina,
Ye-
Winnipeg, and Minnesota. So that is definitely a grueling, 5 games to start the
Yeah,
season,
yeah. I
right?
would say it starts off pretty tough with those, Florida matchups, and then you have a couple of other really good teams in there in Carolina and Winnipeg. And then once you kind of, get past that Minnesota game, because even they're a decent team, it can burn you
For
depending on,
sure.
the situation. It looks to kind of lighten up. So if you're the Flyers, I think the goal would probably be at least to start off or try to start off 500 until you can get to that Minnesota game, and then maybe try to cement yourself and pull away a little bit, or get some cushion on top of that 500 record maybe that you started out with against the tougher opponents like the Floridas, the Carolinas, the Winnipegs, for example. I think for the start for this team, like it's hard to pinpoint right now just because who knows how training camp's going to go. There could be injuries that kind of change the perspectives that we both have. The way I look at it, I think there's three kind of scenarios. So the first scenario, new coach, new systems potentially. Like there could be some carryover from some of the older systems that play into Talkits, but typically with a new coach, it's usually a fresh blanket, right? So new offensive systems, new neutral zone systems, new defensive systems. So with that, there can be some learning curve, and some things that players might not pick up necessarily right off the bat, and that can cause mistakes in games and cause some early losses. So that's one thing to look at. I also think too, just a lot of different additions, maybe combinations of players potentially playing together. So when you have that with a new coach too, coupled into things in the new system, you could, have a slow start. The second scenario could just be the fact that, hey, you have some new guys playing together. Some new players are brought in Zegras, Dvorak, some other defensemen, a couple other players as well. And with that, a lot of these guys have chips on their shoulders, a lot of excitement. Even the existing players are excited about, the new kind of additions, the addition of the new coach. That just might end up, putting a chip on a lot of guys' shoulders, getting them energized and excited, and thus they kind of come out the gate, really hot due to that. And then there's a third scenario where a lot of these players, it is a new coach. it is a new system. They want to impress the new coach. And because of, trying to impress the new coach, trying to cement yourself in this lineup, earn your ice time, because essentially at this point it's going to be a situation where, since it's a new coach, he might have a hierarchy of how he wants to, have certain lines set up, certain ice time, proportioned amongst different players and so on. So guys could be motivated to say, hey, this is a new coach. I don't know how he's going to play me. I want to really put my all into training camp and to start the season off. And then from that point, essentially, they start off really hot due to that, because Tockett's kind of the new voice in the room. It kind of gets guys fired up, and they also want to kind of prove to him that they can start off really hot and kind of earn that ice time. So I think there's a couple of scenarios. I think the likeliest for me might be number one, just because you usually see teams putting new systems into place start slowly. But I also think number three is a big possibility too. And I do just think, think about all the young guys on this team that are going to have a chance, to play big roles, like Zegras, like a Mitchkov, like a Tippett, for example, like a Cates, right? Even a Luchanko, Grabankin, some other guys that might, be in the mix. They're going to want to prove to Tocchet that they not only belong in the team, but belong in positions that, are beneficial to their success, but also to the team. So like being put into positions where they can succeed and score and things like that. So I think, there's a lot of different ways it could go, but I think those are kind of the three scenarios that I have outlined in my mind of which way it might turn. So yeah. How
Sure,
about
I
you,
think
Yariv?
I think those are all very valid. I think from the Flyers standpoint, you're kind of, again, it's a tough road, especially the two Florida games in Carolina right in the beginning of the season. I think what you hope is the long playoff run for Florida. Kind of, they didn't have a tremendously long off season. There's probably a lot of partying involved in there. Maybe they're a team that might start off slower
Yeah.
than they normally would. And also, teams in general, not just Florida, but all teams tend to be sloppier in the beginning of the season than they are as the season goes on, especially defensively more than anything. So I think if the Flyers kind of come in with this new coach, like you said, a lot of guys trying to make a name for themselves, maybe they end up being a little better on the structure side. I think maybe we'll hope. We'll see how things actually turn out. But I think that's a way you could potentially catch Florida. They did well against Florida in the regular season the
They
past
did,
couple
yeah.
years as it is.
Uh, I will
But
say,
can they catch them, right?
yeah, I will say too, like for the Florida piece, if we're just focusing on them specifically, like most teams get up to play this defending Stanley Cup champions.
Sure,
So,
sure.
you assume the Flyers are going to be really excited, and obviously want to prove that they can hang with a caliber of team that Florida is. Whereas Florida, like, they're raising banners. It's still kind of a celebration for them. So maybe you can catch them, but we'll ultimately see. I do think, there's potential for them to start off strong. I think the fact that you have a lot of young guys that seem to be motivated, like a Zegras, like a Mitchkov, and the new coach, I think players like that will want to prove themselves to Taka that they can make a difference. So I think, seeing the Flyers start hot, knowing that that might be a possibility, that you have that type of talent that wants to prove certain things to a new coach, I think it's a real, potential for them to start off in a good manner. But we'll obviously see how it goes. I think really training camp for me will be a big part of it too, because
Sure, yeah.
if they go into the preseason, and look like terrible, we'll probably have different opinions. Even though preseason doesn't matter necessarily, you want to see them under a new coach at least look somewhat, of a decent team to start off, at least structurally. So we'll
Yeah.
see. I'm also interested to see like what and how this team will look differently under the systems that Talk it's going to implement versus Tortorella, because it's not going to be necessarily very close to the same. So we'll see if the systems he puts into place maybe highlights certain players or unleashes certain guys that we didn't see certain things from in the past couple seasons under Torts, but maybe under Talkett's system it benefits their games more. So there's
Sure.
always that to kind of think
Yeah.
about.
And I think there's also, people make a big deal out of the beginning of the season, and I personally do not. I feel like I hear it every year. Oh, you don't get off to a good, strong start. You're 6 points behind, and then you're running behind the whole season, and that's it. It's over. And it's like, that's a load of crap. What I'm kind of looking at, you very rarely see the very beginning of the season actually hold, like you could be in first place in the beginning of the season. It's almost completely irrelevant. What I really look for is like after the holidays, right? We're talking about January 3rd. That's going to be a tough game. January 3rd after the holidays, essentially, you have Christmas and all that. I guess the 28th is the first game. Seattle, at Vancouver, at Calgary, January 3rd at Edmonton. You get this kind of tough road trip wrapped around the holidays. Then you have Anaheim, Toronto, Tampa Bay, twice at home on the 10th and the 12th, then Buffalo, Pittsburgh, New York, Vegas, Utah. It's going to be like that's the stretch that I think is really going to define the remainder of the season and for the GM, Danny Briere and company to kind of make that determination whether they're going to buy into this season or they're going to do something similar to what they did last year where potentially they sell off some assets and then kind of go to reset. And then there's the other break that's coming up with the Olympic break, right, in February. So February 5th is the last game against Ottawa. And then there's a 20-day break where players go to the Olympics, come back February 25th, and that's like the home stretch, the 25th till the 14th of April. So the 25th is Washington, New York, Boston, Toronto, Utah, Pittsburgh, New York, Washington. So a lot of rivalry games in there, a lot of grind out games. What I kind of think is around January, people like to talk about Thanksgiving being the determination. I don't really buy into that. It's kind of the halfway season mark is where are you halfway through the season? Because it gives you enough time if you're where the Flyers are, right, as a bubble team, it kind of gives you enough time to be like, okay, are we, 20 and 20? Okay, we're still in it. Are we, have we won 10 games? We might not be in it, right? So it's kind of going to be a good determination, but I think we have to watch how the Flyers trend. Like, even if they come in struggling a little bit to the season, like should not be a panic for all of the reasons that you said too, Vasili. Like, those same strengths could also be a weakness, right?
Yeah.
Like the new coach, the young players, right? All those things are like a double-edged sword. So I think probably around then and then that gap between the holidays and the Olympic break, that'll probably be the large determination of where the Flyers sit. Um, towards the end of the season, towards the trade deadline, and kind of what will be the season. Again, remember, we brought this up so many times already, but I'm going to bring it up again. And we brought it up last year. There is a fail-safe built into this year, just like there was a fail-safe built into that last year. You can see when a team really believes that they're a playoff team and not, and it's by the roster determinations they made, by the acquisitions they made. The Flyers acquisitions, even Dan Vladar, all of them are tradable, removable, a lot of contracts coming off the books next year. So around that territory, we're going to have a good idea to know what the Flyers are kind of looking at going into the following year, which we've been talking about for, I don't know, Vasily, 3 years already, just looking at their financials, right? All the money coming off the books, all the free agency that's going to happen, even if it's a fraction of the guys available, it's still going to be much better than the UFA class that was this past year. And then you have the cap going up again, and a very strong draft, obviously with a franchise player at the very top of it. So I don't know. I feel like that's the real territory. What do you think about what I'm saying about, like, right after Christmas going to the Olympic break?
Yeah, I think that's an important stretch because first of all, you're kind of out of the initial part of the season where, let's say, if you did have a struggling portion, you can kind of key in on how did the team bounce back. And if they did bounce back, how long was that stretch for? So you're basically almost into like a quarter of the season. So it's easy to assess or at least provide a more accurate assessment of what the team actually might be. Whereas just a month in, it could go either way, right? Like we've seen in the past, Edmonton start seasons off and go on like, a really terrible run into the middle of November and then make it to the Stanley Cup finals. So like that first month, can be blown out of proportion a lot, to your point. You really find out a lot later into the season. I would say like, the key point, at least for me, the inflection point is probably right after Thanksgiving, to your point, even into the Christmas break, into the Olympic break too. Like once you hit that, 25, 30 games in, and you can kind of start to make your assessment and really say, oh, okay, this is what this team is. And it's not too small of a sample size, because if you look at it, right, like any player could have a hot 10 games, any goalie could have a hot 10 games, any team can have a hot 10 games, and vice versa, right? They could have a cold streak for that same amount of time. So
We've
I
seen the
think
Flyers do that in the same
yeah,
season.
exactly, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
like I think you can see polar opposites, and that 10 game sample size, especially to start like a month off of October, is just too small. Whereas once you get past like 25, 30 game sample size, you can really start to drill down and understand, okay, this is who these players really are, because for, this many games they've provided this production or look like this on the ice, or have done this in a positive way or have done this in a negative way, and vice versa. So you can look at it a lot more confidently when there's more of a sample size. So
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. And I think that's what Danny's going to be looking for, right? I think he's going to be looking for like where are they after Christmas, right? Like how is the team progressing? How are the young guys progressing? Did they overachieve, underachieve? Did they achieve, about what he thought? Because there's also some room there to make moves. Danny Briere, we talked about this, is probably not the exact roster that they're going into the next season with, right? Not
no,
even
yeah,
this upcoming
definitely
season,
not.
but the following, right? So, there's gonna be opportunity there for Danny. There's kind of like a silver lining to if they are good or if they're bad, because at least if they're bad, they'll probably pull the cord on it like they did this
Yeah,
past
yeah.
year with the Frost and Farabee trade, where there'll
Trade
be
what assets you can, essentially.
yes, like and in preparation for that following season where they actually do plan on making a more significant jump. Though I will say, bringing in, I brought this question up to Jim Jackson, right? I was like, when have you seen the Flyers make this trade? And I put him on the spot, but we were both racking our brains, and I tried to think about it prior to the show. Like, I can't think of a time where the Flyers actually were able to trade for a guy like Trevor Zegras, and get a young guy not even really in his prime, with a really high pedigree. It's a pretty big trade. So, but again, it aligns with the timeline and everything. So typically the
Yeah.
Flyers are
The the
picking up those guys like
only
when they're in
the
their
only player
30s.
that comes to mind is Voracek, but you gave up a lot more to get him. So
Yeah, actually, that's a great point. Yeah, it was Jake Voracek who also didn't like similar to Zegras, like came in with a really high pedigree, top 10
yeah.
pick, but also didn't hit that ceiling. And then with the Flyers, he kind of started progressing to be a star player. So let's hope we have similar success here. But we'll see how that goes. So the next thing and this was the question I asked ChatGPT, and I just thought it was an interesting answer. And
What did Chat GPT try to say here?
so I asked ChatGPT about Matvey Mitchkov and what could be the statistical potential of his second season in the league, and it was interesting because it went high. And again, it's going off of public opinion, but also it's kind of gathering data on his, past success and his current streak and expectations, right? It's kind of jumbling all that into one, trying to do the same guesstimate we do. And it had it between 75 and 85 points and
Okay,
plus
yeah.
35 goals.
Yeah.
Um, and I think it had it at 37 goals if I remember off the top of my head correctly, which is
Okay.
pretty high. And it's a
Yeah.
big jump. And that's again a sophomore season. Let's just call it 80, right? Instead of 75 to 85. Let's just call it. But if he walks away this upcoming year with a 80-point season with 35 goals on the season, which I do think is possible. I very much think is possible, though the sophomore slump exists for like 97% of players, right? But
Yeah.
he is an outlier player. He does fall into that category.
Uh, uh,
But it's an interesting thing. What do you think about ChatGPT kind of throwing out that high prediction for Matvey Mitchkov?
uh, I honestly like, I don't think it's that crazy, and I'll break it down for you, and this is the reason why. Like my prediction for him is 35 goals, 45 assists. That's also 80 points. And I'll tell you why that's my prediction. So he had 26 goals in 80 games. So he'd only need 9 more goals to hit 35. That's really
Okay.
not a ton, especially considering how many times did we see him miss a lot of close chances this year, miss an empty net.
Hit the post a few
Uh,
times.
yeah, and you have to factor in he's a rookie, so he's only gonna, at least in my opinion, he's only gonna progress, only gonna get better. Had the full offseason to train and get stronger and all that. And we know the talent, is more than beyond there. We've seen it in spades, right? So I just think an extra 9 goals. Plus, you added Zegras, who should be able to create more in terms of like creativity out there, just finding open teammates, finding Michkov open, for example. Both guys high skill, kind of think the same type of way in terms of just creating offense and handling the puck and all that. And I can't expect the power play to be this shit again. So if it is, it's a real problem. But
Yeah.
like I just figure it cannot be that bad again. So even if it's like 20th or like something like that alone will be maybe 3, 4 more extra goals. And then you probably just need 5 more even strength goals. So I don't think 35 is that out of the realm of possibility. And then for the assists, like,
Also, if the
it,
power play is
yeah,
reasonable,
yeah.
like a 20%.
That's what I mean. Yeah, in general, right? So, and also like he had 37 assists last season. So 26 goals, 37 assists, 63 points. So for my projection, for him to get from 37 assists to 45, like that's not crazy either, right? That's only 8 extra assists. And I imagine if the
Yeah, he
power play would
probably
be
should have had
better,
that. He probably should have had that this year, considering how many
a lot.
opportunities were missed
Yeah,
of
exactly.
what
By
he created.
players,
Yeah.
especially early on in the season, I felt that he had, guys set up for empty nets and 2-on-1s and guys
And he
missing
had
like
like,
blatantly.
and he had a month of like dead points too,
Yeah,
right?
like for me, I think ChatGPT's like hitting the nail on the head. Like I like the prediction. I'm gonna go with a similar thing. Like my prediction
Point per
right
game.
now,
Yeah.
yeah, point per game. I think 80 points around there. 35 around 35 goals, 45 assists. Like I think that's very realistic for Mitchkov, especially considering that they're gonna rely and probably lean on him a lot more. I think this season, like I
Mhm.
think Talkett realizes what type of player he is, that he's a star, that you want to put the puck in his hands on his stick so he can make plays. Not to say that Tortorella didn't realize that, but I don't know if he had as much of a
I
willingness to do that for a
yes.
rookie. You know what I
Yes.
mean?
I think Tortorella has this like, and I think it's actually there's wisdom behind it. So I'm not going to say it's like
Yeah.
an irrational thing, but he has this whole thing at the end of the day where he's like, "You're a rookie.
You
I'm
got to
just
earn
not,
it.
I'm yeah. You got to earn it, and I'm just not going to do that to you. You know what I
And you
mean?
don't want to give
Sort of
you
being
never
McDavid, right?
yeah, you never want to give a rookie too much to bite off that they can't chew, right? And I think that's kind of was his
Sink or
thought process
swim
as well.
type of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah.
We're talking, I think it's going to be a lot more open. I think you're going to see the reins kind of unleashed off Mitchkov in a sense.
In
Where like
comparison to Torts, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Right. So I think that too can probably allow for him to maybe take some more chances in spots where last season he might have not taken that same chance because who's your head coach who's kind of barking down your neck? You're kind of thinking about that in the back of your head. Hey, if I go for this puck and I fuck it up, I'm probably going to end up on the bench. Whereas Rick Tocchet, it might not be the exact same situation where, hey, he might deal with a situation like that a little bit differently, especially if Mitchkov can kind of explain himself and kind of give him an insight into why he might have done something like that. Versus Tortorella, I think, is kind of just clamped down where it's like, hey, you made that mistake. Right?
Yeah. And there's a whole new coaching staff too. So like
Yeah.
they don't know all the headaches that were created last season before, and not just with Mitchkov, just with the team in general, right? And like Yogi coming in and he's going to be running the offense. Like this is a skills coach converted to be an offensive coach, right? So he's going to see guys with skill, right? And
Yeah.
he's probably going to approach it, I would assume, a little differently than Rocky Thompson. And maybe find a way to unleash more points from guys who have skill. At least that's what we hope. So speaking of skill, I also asked the question. This is not on our show notes, but I do remember off the top of my head. I did ask the question about Trevor Zegras as well, and it gave me 58 to 60 points. So
Okay.
kind of a rebound year for Trevor Zegras. I think that kind of aligns with what we were talking about. I think we would hope for better, but I think that's also a realistic thing to go from being like a 40-point guy coming to a new team. I think if he gets back to 60, would you consider that like a success?
Yeah, I would say that's pretty that like that's a solid season for him. Like I think Zegras, what, he was in the 30 range last season, was he not, in
No,
terms of
40,
points?
40.
Oh, 40. Okay.
I
So
think he had
that's a
41. It
Okay,
was
cool. Yeah.
30 something the year before, or maybe he had 47. I gotta look it up now. Sorry, go ahead. Go
Yeah,
ahead.
I'm,
Finish your
I'm
thought.
no, no, I'm searching it up too. I'm interested for myself. No, yeah. So last season he had 32 points. And then the season before that he was hurt and had 15.
Oh, it was 32
So
points, right? It was
yeah, so
47 point pace. That's where I was getting that in my head.
yeah, so I just think, if you're gonna jump from like 32 points, even though you were hurt, to 60, that's a pretty big jump. So I think that would be a success, definitely. Like you'd hope though, if he's playing with Mitchkov, and Mitchkov's a point a game, he's closer to that 70 point
But
range,
yeah,
obviously.
we
But
he has to be healthy, right? Because the 57 points didn't come in 82, or the 32 points didn't come in 82 games, right? It came in
yeah.
57, and then prior he played 31 games and was half a point a game player as well. So we'll see. So the question that I have around Zegras, and we both believe he's going to play center, right? And we both believe that the organization is going to play him at center, especially in the beginning of the year. They're not going to be like, "Oh, he can't win face-offs. Like we're not even going to bother." I think they're definitely going to bother, right? Like they're going to force it, even if it at times looks like it doesn't work. Though I
Yeah.
think it will. But even if it doesn't work, I think they're going to force it because they want him to be a center. But the question I have: will we see him on the wing at all in the early parts of the season? And I mean like preseason training camp. Will we see like a line combination? Like I threw this out, during one of our episodes, like a Zegras, Couturier, Mitchkov line, which on paper makes a ton of sense, but ideally you want Zegras in the middle. It's why you traded for him, to hope that you can find that dynamic center you've been looking for, especially one that's not 19 years old. That's going to be heading into his mid 20s. Do you think that we will see him on the wing at all in preseason, in training camp, like at times? Or do you think that it'll be all center for the beginning of the season? Like, because a lot of times we go in with certain expectations and they get rocked a little bit. And then we see combinations of stuff where we're like, I don't really like this, because I don't know if I would like it. I'm curious about it, but it's not ideal for why we brought him in here for the very beginning.
Yeah, I mean, the Flyers acquired him, I would imagine, to be a center. So my thought process is they'll probably try him there at C. I feel like he will stick at center majority of the preseason games, even like the first month of October, if I was the coaching staff. So think if I'm Rick Tocchet, that's what I would do, because realistically, you want him to get accustomed to that center position with your organization and the new systems you're implementing. So the more ice time he gets and the more reps he gets at center, the more chance, for him to first of all improve in that position, but also if he is making mistakes, identify those mistakes and learn from them. So that's why I think, playing center would be the most beneficial. But there could be situations where maybe he does see some wing time. I think mainly if we do see it, it's going to be right at the beginning, like the first couple preseason games where like you have maybe two lines that are like NHL ready guys. Maybe there's a couple combos where he's like out on the left wing or something, depending on who else is, in the lineup with him, right? Like, so we'll see. I think it might depend on like those early preseason lineups and who the NHL guys are versus like the AHL guys that like make up like the, third and fourth lines that they typically do,
Sure.
right?
I
Usually you see like six, NHL guys maybe, and the
It's like
rest like
half and half.
AHL.
Yeah, it's like
Yeah.
half and half squads.
So it
Yeah,
depends.
I think the one place we could see it, and maybe even throughout the season, is on the power play, because his
Yeah,
face-off game's not strong.
there it makes a ton of sense. I think we'll see him not be a centerman on the power play and potentially maybe even be a guy that's like at the point or at the wing
Sure.
or
Like the way I kind of see the top power play unit, and again, I have no idea. This would 100% could be wrong, but like if I had to put together a top power play unit, one, I need a net front presence, right? So I don't think Zegras is ideal for that, right? So I kind of think of it as like, I got my biggest, strongest center in Sean Couturier. Like he's the best guy on face-offs. I want him in the middle. I want Zegras on the left. I want Mitchkov on the right, and then I want Konechny, like, and Jamie Drysdale. Like that's my top five power play unit. I don't know if that's what's going to be the case, you know. But like I kind of see it playing out like that, and that's a scenario where I see Trevor Zegras potentially playing some wing time. having said that, like maybe he's going to get better on the face-off dot as well. He had his worst face-off statistics last year, but prior to that, he was kind of hovering around 40%. Last year, he finished at 36.6%, which is very bad. But we've seen other guys improve on the face-off here as well. So I don't know. I'm kind of like I do
Learning
believe,
from Couturier, right? That's a big thing. So
yeah, and also like they probably gave him a list of things they want him to work on going into the
oh,
season. I
definitely.
imagine face-offs is top of the list, right?
Yeah, especially if he himself wants to be a center, they probably said, "Hey, this needs to improve. It just is what it is. You cannot be a 30% faceoff taker and consistently be a top two line center in this league. It's just not the
Yeah.
case." So,
And again, we assume that Alex Bump is going to make the team. We don't know. Again, like I still think there's this weird scenario where you can start Bump off in the minors, and you can't do that with a guy like Jet Luchanko. So like I kind of see from like a roster management, it's like it's not a big risk to not give Bump a roster. And like I mean, if he's ready, he's ready, you know.
well, it depends.
But
It depends, right? Like, I think it depends for that, especially for Bump. Like, it depends on the other guys. Like, let's say his training camp is terrible and Grabankin completely outplays him, then maybe that is the case, right? You never know what's going to
sure.
happen in camp. So,
Yeah, yeah, no, absolutely. I just mean like you can take a risk on dropping Bump to the minors for the first 10 games of the season. It's not going to kill him. It's not going to kill your
no, no.
roster, right? But where a guy like Luchanko, you kind of have to make a decision pretty early.
Yeah.
But what I do think about with the Bump situation and Luchanko, I'm like, okay, Luchanko is already better than Zegras on faceoffs. Like, is there an opportunity there to like play Luchanko down the middle, move Dvorak over to the wing, even though he's very good, but play him with Zegras, right? And that way it compensates for the defense. The guy can he's a 20 goal scorer in the NHL essentially. He can hop in there and split face off time with Zegras, to help Zegras, maybe like when Zegras is on like his offhand or whatever,
That's an interesting idea. Yeah. Like,
right?
if you
Like
had them paired together, I mean, maybe you could,
to
it's
do it with Cates
possible.
too.
Yeah, it's possible they do that with Cates. I mean, who knows if they do something like that even with Couturier. Like, I think everybody pencils Couturier in at center, but you got to know that as the years go by here, he's going to continue to slow down and slow down. Like, remember Claude Giroux getting pushed to the wing? Like, I don't know if that's something they might potentially eventually try to
It's
like give him
possible.
longevity,
As
but
long
like,
as it's not a fourth line left wing role, I'm
no,
okay
no,
with
but I
it.
mean, like, let's say it was Zegras on center, and you have Couturier come in and kind of take the face-offs on his, on his strong side when it's Zegras' offhand, and vice versa. You kind of switch.
It's
Who
possible.
knows?
I think it's possible. I think my expectations for Couturier is a comeback year. So I would kind of see that as a negative, unless like unless Couturier is still putting up 60-point pace and playing the wing, then it's like okay, fucking whatever. But I just look at again, I'm still nervous about Zegras playing middle because of the defensive game without him having, like you mentioned the Mitchkov, TK, Zegras combination, which like on paper, like I expect to see that preseason at some point. On paper, I'm like, yeah, it's a dynamic line that could potentially put up a lot of points. But I also like, is that the type of line that gets hemmed in their own zone? And then he's
Uh,
not very good at face off, so he's not winning the draw on the
it's
defensive side or
possible.
even in the offensive zone
That's one way to
or
look at
or
it, but
neutral zone.
that's one way to look at it. But they could just have the puck so much that it's not really a problem for them. That's how
It's
you got to look at it too,
yeah,
right?
absolutely, and that's where I'm like, look, this is why like
Where
I
it's like,
always
hey, sorry to interrupt, but
no
I
no
just
go
want to
ahead
say,
go.
like, they could have the puck so much, right, that like it's not a problem. And even when they do get penned in, it happens, at such a like lesser amount that it really doesn't become an issue for you in the sense that like they're outscoring their problems. So who cares, right?
I look that could definitely be the case. I'm just like
I could
who
be completely wrong
who
though.
who
So
in that line is winning battles along the boards on a regular basis? It's
yeah.
like none of those three guys. So like I can't see that line being a line as in the beginning of the NHL season. Now, if Trevor Zegers comes in and he's better two-way than I expect, and I have not watched him as much as the other players on the team, then that's a whole different story. I think if that ends up being a successful line, it's a huge win. Like, let's be
Yeah.
honest.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
if that
1000%.
line works, it's a humongous win for the organization. And then a lot of the, negativity gets kind of thrown aside because you're okay. Well, at least on paper, you have a dynamic, high flying line that can really, because like Claude Giroux is not a big guy, but he won puck battles, right?
Yeah.
Zegras is about the same size Giroux, maybe
Mitchkov
a
can
little bit
win
taller.
battles, so can Konechny, in my
I
opinion. So
think I think Mitchkov is going to be much better defensively throughout his career than I think a lot of people give him credit for. I just look at the fact again, like sophomore year,
yeah, yeah.
how is he going to come in strength wise, speed wise, on the stick? But again, he's an outlier player, so like I wouldn't be shocked if he's
If
considerably
he's
better.
Yeah, that's what I mean. He just
Like like
improved over this offseason,
like
right?
Brink was. Like
Yeah.
nobody expected Brink to be as good defensively as he was this year, and he's what 5'8", five
That's what I
nine at
mean.
best.
That's why I don't see it as such a like, oh wow, kind of thing that will shock me because when you have such a talented player that's so determined, like usually these guys improve these areas and
Yeah, they
rise to the
figure it
top
out.
just because of
Yeah,
that determination in
yeah.
general. So
I want to. My realistic side goes Couturier, Konechny, Mitchkov. My fan excited part hopes that we will see Zegras, Mitchkov, and Konechny, or at least Zegras and Mitchkov together
hey,
with like a with Owen Tippett on the left side or Tyson Forrester, which I think again we don't know what's going on with Forrester, but Forrester with Mitchkov and
that'd be
Zegras.
interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah, like Forrester is a puck winning player. Like you put him in the corners, he's coming out with that puck like 70% of the time. So that is a guy I feel really comfortable with playing with Mitchkov. I really hope, or Zegras, I really hope we get to see him in the early part of the season. Otherwise, that's where a guy like Bump obviously becomes more prevalent,
Oh
and we
yeah.
don't, the whole second half of the show is going to be all like call up guys. So we'll talk about them. So the other question I have is the Luchanko dilemma, right? So right now Luchanko is injured. We didn't get to see him at development camp, so kind of back of everybody's mind. We don't know how bad the groin injury is at this point. Again, if you look at how the WJSS was handled, like they sent Porter Martone home pretty quickly. Like a lot of the guys who were surefire players to make the team, they didn't play that many games, and that was kind of what I suspected. Like, yeah, Luchenko's banged up, but it's also like you're on
He
the
would have got
team.
sent home after 2 days as well. So he's probably
Exactly.
like, hey, why should I risk hurting my groin when I can
Or
kind of rest it?
yeah, or the
Um,
Flyers said that,
or just
right?
be
Or
cautious.
they yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
that was the thought.
yeah, I just
Oh my
think
God,
for
I'm sorry.
Luchenko, like I just don't see a benefit of him going back to the OHL. So due to that, I think he makes the team. Like
Well,
that's the way I look at it. It's pretty simple. Like I don't have too much analysis to give, but I just think, hey, like it will negatively impact his development, in my opinion, if he goes back to the OHL at this point, because I just think Guelph is such a bad team that he's gonna either pick up bad habits being on such a bad team, or he's just gonna stagnate because he's not playing with guys that are very talented, so they're not bringing out much else in his skill set, right? Like he's
yeah,
kind of stagnating in a sense in the OHL. I think the NHL is, the next place for him. That makes the most sense. Ideally the AHL, but at this point
I
it's
like
either NHL or CHL. So for me, it's NHL because of that.
okay. Well, I half agree with that. I do think he's gonna make the team. I don't I see everybody's point with the stagnation part. I also see like a benefit to being like you're the man there. You have to do everything for this team.
Yeah.
It'll be
Uh,
extra grueling because of that, but there's no playoffs, there's no Memorial Cup, you know. But I want to say this. This is why I was talking about the bump thing, right? Because with bump, you can be like, okay, let's say Forrester's on the team, right, to
yeah.
start the year. With bump, you could be like, okay, bump is like ready or borderline ready, but we can bury him in the minors for a short period of time. Inevitably, there will be an injury or somebody won't be playing well, and then we can call him in and just plug him right in the lineup because he's like ready, right? And Luchanko, you can't really do that. I also brought this up to Jim last episode. You weren't on, so I'll bring it up to you. There is a world where the Flyers go, typically, we don't want to burn a guy's contract taking a risk, but weighing the options because going to Guelph, to your point, and to to the consensus point, it's not that big of a benefit to go play for Guelph. So it's like maybe there is a benefit to just taking the risk, even if it doesn't work out. Let's say he plays 30 games with the Flyers and they're like, he's not quite ready. We're gonna burn a year of the CLC, and it just is what it is. And we're gonna lose. We don't typically want to do this, but considering we don't have this exemption rule to leverage this year, we're just
Yeah.
gonna do it. We're just gonna burn the year of the
I
ELC, and we'll give him 25 NHL games and send him, to the OHL for the rest of the year.
To me, that's a better outcome than sending him to the CHL, to the OHL.
Like the
Just
whole
because,
season,
yeah, because
because
at
he
least
has
in that,
World Juniors too.
yeah, at least in that situation, he gets to firstly get NHL experience under his belt, more NHL games, so he can kind of pick at and look at, okay, what do I need to do to get better to make sure, next year I do make it and I can stay up for the full season and don't get sent to the AHL because by that point, he'll be AHL eligible by next year, obviously. But anyways, like I think for him, like it's probably NHL. The only way the OHL makes sense is if he gets traded to a new team and the new team is a contender and like they have more Memorial Cup aspirations and like the season is okay, go back to the OHL, go win a gold with Canada at the World Juniors and go win a Memorial Cup. And that kind of is the goal for him. But unless he gets traded, I don't see the benefit of going back to Guelph, right? So I totally agree. I think it's better off to start him in the NHL. And if he does struggle, better to send him back. And at least he has some of that NHL experience he can draw from and prepare him for the following season. So
Yeah.
but yeah, I assume if he makes the NHL team though, that he'll do so by proving that in camp. It won't be like, oh, we just don't want to send him back to CHL, so whatever, we'll just
No,
put
he
him
has
on
to
the
prove
team type of thing,
totally.
right?
Yes. Yeah, he has to prove it. 100% agree. But I consider the fact that like, look, the reason he made the team last year was John Tortorella's like bias towards
Yeah,
him.
yeah.
But we can't deny that he also didn't look out of place in the NHL. And then when he comes into the AHL, and I bring this up about like Bump, who did
Yeah.
play well in the AHL and had a good playoffs, but did stagnate offensively, though he did not play poorly. He played well. He had a lot of scoring chances in the playoffs. Luchanko got better as the playoffs went on,
He
and
did,
he
yeah.
wasn't invisible against Hershey, and he tied for most points by he was the only 18-year-old to put up 6 points in 7 games or whatever it was in the playoffs. So, he does have a little bit of that outlier, in him already. So I do kind of look at that a little bit. We'll see how he comes in, and he has to be healthy, right? If he's not healthy to start the year, then there's no way he's going to make the Flyers, right? At least I don't think. And I don't even know if it would be wise to keep a
No, it
guy that
wouldn't.
young
It
who's like
wouldn't be.
struggling with an injury, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see how things are. Again, it's like why training camp and preseason are so important for these predictions, and we'll have a lot better predictions, obviously, as we roll into that period. They'll be a lot more accurate. So the other topic I have is Noah Cates. So I was thinking about Noah Cates, and I thought about Scott Lawton, and a lot of people gave up on Scott Lawton's like offensive abilities to be even like a 40-point player, by the age of like 24. And then, he really hit his prime around age 27. And that's where he became like a regular 40-point guy, had his best statistical offensive seasons. And I think Noah Cates is a lot better than Scott Lawton, offensively and defensively. He's not as good of a skater. Like, he's not as dynamic or quick on his feet as Scott Lawton
The
is.
instincts are better in my opinion.
Right, better hockey IQ, better in the corners. I
Better
think his shot
positioning
is
in
a little bit
general.
better. Yeah, I think he's a better player than Scott Lawton. So my whole thought is like, is Noah Cates being underrated a little bit? Like I did ask ChatGPT while I was like queuing this up, like projectable like offensive stats, and it was like, I don't really know this one. Estimated between 40 and 45 points. And I'm like, okay, yeah, that's pretty reasonable, for a $4 million like third line player. But I do wonder, like, is there a 50-point guy in there? If like that Brink Forrester, Cates line was together all year, and Cates didn't come into the season injured and didn't struggle mightily in the beginning of the season trying to come back from that
He would
injury.
have hit 20 goals, yeah.
Right. 20 goals. Like, is there maybe a 50-point season in this guy for the upcoming year, which I don't think is completely out of the question to have a 20 goal, 30 assist season. And considering about how good he is in the two-way game, in the corners, kind of his role for the team, is he underrated a little bit, amongst Flyers fans, where like I think he gets primarily thought of as like a bottom six guy by most people, but like I kind of see him more as a middle six guy with the ability to like with like still offensive upside. Like I still think he's 2 years away from his peak NHL play. So I kind of like look at it. I was like, is this going to be one of those years where like Tocchet falls in love with Noah Cates because he brings it all, kind of the same way Sean Couturier did in his prime, where like Couturier just kind of every aspect that a coach wanted in a player he had outside of pure speed, right? And coaches just fell in love with him. I was like, I could see that happening with Noah Cates as well, for the same reason why Tocchet likes Dvorak, who's like not an incredible player, not a great skater, but does all of the little things right, can score, can win faceoffs. And it's like, I kind of look at Cates as like, maybe this is a breakout season for Cates, and by breakout, I mean like 50 points, like, and that's a pretty big jump to go from, 37 points or whatever he had to 50 points in a season. That's a pretty large jump for like a third line player.
Yeah, I mean, I think 50 points would be a ceiling if he was to get there. I think it's possible. I think it just will depend now, though, on ice time because I feel like he's going to get a lot less ice time potentially this season versus last. Like, I think they were using him in a forced line role, Tortorella was. I doubt he's going to get that type of usage under Tocchet. Like, it'd be very surprising to me. But if it does happen, like, maybe we see closer to 50. Like, I think for me, like, I think he can get 20 goals because he was really close last season, like 16 goals. He had a pace where like I think he had like 10 goals, like 15 or 20 games or something like that. It was looking really good. If he just like is consistent how he was through the middle of the year versus kind of how he was to start, and I believe how he was to start was more just the fact that they didn't give him lineup opportunities. Like he started outside of the lineup. Not really his fault, in my opinion. So, yeah, I think he could be a 20 goal guy. Is 50 possible? I think maybe. I just think, and I don't know if the ice time will be there or the power play time will be there.
Sure.
But I think
Especially with
20
Zegras
goals,
here. Yeah.
I think 20 goals might be possible just because he had 16 last season. Um, he was a guy that was going to certain areas that you like weren't expecting, like taking the puck in by himself towards the net, like taking the puck into the slot and ripping it. So it seems like he found, a little bit of more offensive swagger, confidence. You got to hope he can kind of carry that into next season, right?
Yeah, I'm with you. And like, I don't think his offensive ceiling is like exuberantly high, but part of me, and this is probably biased because I am a big Noah Cates fan, but part of me like wonders if he's like kind of like the Mike Knuble type of a guy who like ages like a fine wine because of the way he plays, where like he just keeps getting better and like people are not really sure why, and
Maybe.
like, is he maybe a 55 to 60 point guy at some point in his season? Maybe it's not sustained for long periods of time, but maybe he has one of those years where he's just on the right line with the right players and it's just rolling
I
type of
feel like
guy.
everything would have to go perfectly right for him to ever
Well,
hit
the
like
team,
past that,
I
right?
think
So
the team overall has to be good for him to do that.
yeah, yeah, of
Like, he
course,
can't
definitely.
be the guy
No,
driving
then
offense.
then that's a big problem,
Right?
I think.
But that's who Mike Knuble was, right? Like Mike Knuble without like Peter Forsberg and Simone Gagne, he's not a top line player, right? He was like a good power forward who just like did all the little things right, was amazing around the net,
Yeah.
like but when you put him with two guys who were elite and the statistical output followed with it. It's like that's how I kind of see Noah Cates is like if you put him with the right, or even a guy like Sean Couturier, right? You put him with Claude Giroux, you put him with
Maybe,
Jake
yeah.
Voracek, he puts up
I
37 goals in a season, right?
It's possible. I think he has the skill set to like benefit off line mates that are really talented and create extra space for them. I just don't think personally, I just don't think he's ever going to get the opportunities to play with those players. So just is
Well,
what it is.
I'm biased against Cates.
Fair.
I'm a Cates fan. Like,
I like him. I think he's a good player. I think he's a valuable player. I just don't think he's ever going to get into that position where he'll play with those top of the end lineup guys like you were
I
stating, like a
I
Forsberg, Gagne. Like I don't think he'll ever be in the position where they'll be like, "Ooh, like Mitchkov and Zegras, let's put Cates there." I just think they won't do that.
well, I see. I could see him playing on the wing with them, but I can't
Maybe.
see him playing in the middle with them. Like I can't see Noah Cates being a top six forward with Mitchkov and TK and like all these guys on a regular basis.
No,
But
no, I
I
just think
could
like
see him being like as a
yeah,
complementary player.
I just think for the Flyers, like if you look at their roster, they would rather have Forster in that spot. They'd rather have Tippett in that spot. They'd rather have Konechny in that spot, right? So there's like 4 or 5 guys that are above him
Yeah,
already.
yeah, yeah. I totally see your point. I guess it depends how the top nine fills out, right? And who
Yeah, yeah.
plays where and who will be here, not even just this season, but next year, right? What kind of center guys are going to be in there? Will Noah Cates be a center at the NHL level long term? Will he get shifted over to wing at some point? When guys like Jack Nesbitt and Luchanko are full-time NHLers and let's say Zegras stays in the middle. Because like, what happens if Luchanko makes the team is 100% NHL ready? Who is playing center in the top nine? Right? Is it Zegras? Is it Couturier? Is it Luchanko? Is it Cates? Is it Dvorak? Like I don't know. So I'm just kind of I don't know. I'm open to it, but to me, like the same way Scott Hartnell wasn't like though he was pretty good offensive player but he was like a 50-point guy in the league. Like he wasn't an incredible offensive player, but he was able to play with really good players and he had a good shot and he was really good around the net, right? He was more offensive than Cates, but he had that ability to just like you put him with talented guys and he was like that guy who just kind of did it all with them. I see Cates being able to play that role and that's what he was drafted for initially was like not this third line center guy. It was like the guy who could play off the wing and win corner battles, like kind of like a poor man's Forrester in a way. And when I see Forrester, I see point per game player. I think Jim Jackson is kind of in that realm as well. Where a lot of people might see Forrester as like a 65-point guy, I see him as like 75 to 80 point player in the league. So, okay, last topic, and then we'll go to the second half of the show, and then we'll end it after that. So, Owen Tippett is turning into the new whipping boy on Twitter.
I mean,
Yeah. And, I'm going to give shout out to Bill Matz here, who, I do listen to his show. He's very down on Owen Tippett because of his post season interview. And he's like, oh, I thought he had a pretty good season. And then you find out that, like, Nathan McKinnon, when he was putting up 60 points a year, when he was being interviewed at the end of the year, they asked him what he thought about his season and only putting up 60 points. He's like, I don't know what you're talking about. He's like, I thought I had a very good season. And, like that's pretty much what Tippett did this year, having a down year and didn't beat himself up publicly. And I wonder if people are kind of blowing that out of proportion a little bit when you see a guy like Nathan McKinnon, who's like 100+ point player every year, which I don't think Tippett will be. But, when you see, you know, other elite players that like kind of just don't beat themselves up and it's just like it was one question. I do wonder if people are kind of like taking the Tippett thing like out of proportion because like I kind of expect Tippett to be a 60+ point player in the NHL still with like 30+ goals and like 20 some assists a season, just like a pure scorer type of guy. But I do notice that people are pretty down on him right now. But I do think he is one of those guys who's also very ripe for a big rebound year and an excellent candidate to play with a guy like Trevor Zegras.
yeah, like I think Tippett obviously didn't have a good season, like 43 points, only 20 goals. I mean, I think the interview and him saying, "Oh, I thought I had an okay season," like I, personally, I think if you're a player, you should be honest and actually like give like your honest assessment. So maybe he thinks he didn't have a bad season. Maybe he thinks there's certain outlying factors that, contributed to him having 43 points, whatever it may be. Like, I don't really take the interview part into account. Like, I don't really care about what the guy says in the interview. He can say whatever he
Me
wants in the
neither.
interview. It's all about what he does on the ice. So whether he thinks he did shit, on the ice, or off the ice, and then he's in the interview saying that or not, like whatever. As long as you're on the ice and you can produce, you could say whatever you want off the ice. So I think that's totally aside from the point. For me, I look at it this way, right? Like, I think he could be a 60-point player. I think he showed in the past that, he has the ability to score 30 goals in this league. He's yet to do it. Um, I would say this is like not a make or break season for him, but if you look at all the younger players coming up in the system, a lot of wingers, I would say like this is a season where he probably needs to have a bounce back year,
Yeah, for sure.
just to cement himself on this roster. Because if you're going forward with the cap going up, his contract's going to become eatable by a lot of teams. So I think if like he has another year where it's like 40 points, 43 points, the Flyers might trade him, to be honest, or might look to
It,
move him.
it's
So
it's possible, you could eat a portion of his salary too to get a better return.
that's what I
Um,
mean.
I don't.
I just think they'll look at their options with him and say, hey, $6 million for 40 points isn't cutting it for 2 years in a row. Like, let's see what else is out there.
Yeah,
But to your point, I think he will bounce back and have like a 55-point season. I don't think he's going to have a 40-point season, but we'll see what happens.
I think they're going to be more patient than this year. I do think he needs to rebound. I do agree with that premise, like this year. But considering they signed him for such a long-term deal, I can't see them like wanting to jump out of it so immediate and just taking the loss on it. Because, again, you put yourself in a bad position. You're kind of forced to move him. You're not going to get anything really for him. You might have to give up a prospect or a pick to get rid of him, to get rid of the salary just because of the position you put yourself in, not because that's his actual value. So it's like, I don't think like, and then you look at the cap going up and the amount of cap space they're going to have. And the odds are like UFA market's not going to be like completely loaded with guys who are going to come sign here, at a reasonable amount of money. So I don't know. I think he's a little more time than that, but I do agree that like next year it's a big year in the perception of Owen Tippett
I
and
think
a
it
lot by the
depends.
fan base.
I think it depends on what the season is. Like if he has another down season, like he barely hit 20 goals this year. The only reason he hit 20 goals is like the last 5, 6 games where
Yeah.
nothing really mattered. He had like 4 or 5 goals in that stretch, right? Or else he would have been at like 16 or 17. So
But he
I
was
think,
what, top four on the point team in points or something like that.
yeah, I mean, I just think like he's a goal scorer, right? So if he's a guy that you're paying 6 million and he doesn't hit 20 goals next season for some reason, like where you have 2 seasons in a row where like, okay, last season he hit 20 goals, but he barely scratched the surface. And let's say this upcoming season, he hit 15 goals or something, then I see it's a big concern. But if he comes back and he has like over 20 goals, close to 50 points, I think there's no problem. I
What if,
just think for him,
what if it's
he's a goal scorer, so he needs to score, right? If he's not
what
getting 20 goals for you, then what's his benefit on the
what
team?
what if it's 20 goals, 30 assists?
That's fine too. But
Okay.
I just think like you want to see him score more than
It's a lot
like
of money for a
anything.
50-point guy, right? Like,
Yeah, I think you just want to see him score more than anything. Like I think you want to see him, rip down the wing, take a bunch of shots, use that big shot, score a bunch of goals. They paid him to be a goal scorer.
yeah. Well, they
So
paid him because when he got that contract, he was playing like not just scoring, but he was dynamic. He was
yeah,
explosive
yeah,
at that
yeah.
time too. He was just like on a night, at least every other game was having like one play where you're like, Jesus, is that Owen
I,
Tippett? It was like
I
that.
just think he had a down season last year, which could be said for a lot of guys on the team.
Yeah,
I
for
think
sure.
new coaching staff will see him rejuvenated. That's my opinion.
Yeah. I just think they're going to give him a little bit longer of a leash than like 1 year, but I do think there is a point in that contract where if it is not working out, they're going to be like, all right, we got all these wingers coming up. We got Porter Martone here. We got all these guys.
Yeah.
We're better off clearing out the cap space and utilizing that money somewhere else if he's not going to be, a 30 goal guy like we thought he was going to be when we gave him that contract. All right. I just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes. And for the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes to give us a rating and a follow as well. If you have not done that so far, please do so now. That is the best way to support this show. It's what keeps us going and growing. So please do that now. Okay. Last segment. We were talking about the first half of the season, second half of the season. We have no idea as of right now who is going to make the team. We're probably still a month and a half away from having a good idea of that. And I put some players down here on paper for me and you, Vasili, but we can obviously go off this list as well, like to other players. But late season call ups. We don't know what's going to happen. We don't know if people are going to get traded or injured. We have some names, like Andre, who is already borderline. Will he make the team out of camp? I think I'm kind of hoping that he does, that he
I
kind of
think he could.
rebounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, that he's one of those guys. I think people are like on the internet, I'm seeing like Dennis Gilbert, Noah Juleson, like being penciled in as the Flyers' bottom pairing. I think that is way off. I'll be surprised if Noah Juleson plays the whole season in the NHL. I think Gronz is better than Juleson. So I kind of see those guys as like just early season supplementary guys. I think Gilbert's going straight to the AHL. I think that's what he was brought in here to be. I think Juleson was the right-handed like number 7 guy that they were thinking that
Talking's
they could
familiar with
bench.
him as
Yeah,
well, like
and
from
and they could
Vancouver.
bench
So
him because he's like
yeah,
close to 30. So it's not the end of the world if he's
he's
not
your
playing.
typical number 7, basically. Like
Right,
he can come in and play, but also a guy that you, like you said, could sit. Um,
but there's
who
the
do you,
well,
yeah, who
there's
else do you think like
let
that
let
might come up or
yeah.
get
So
called up?
there's the 3 defensemen, and we'll start with defense. I mean, it's really Andre, Granz, and McDonald. I don't think McDonald is NHL ready. I think it depends on how he looks like during the season, but I do think there is opportunity there, depending on injuries. If a guy like Nick Seeler goes down to injury or something like that, which is pretty rare, but I think McDonald could be a call for that. But I really think it's Helge Grants. Like I think the Flyers are super high on him for like a bottom pairing NHL role, like especially to start his season. Played well in the playoffs, had looked really good in his showing in the NHL. And when I kind of look at like outside of Andre, who's already kind of like played NHL games and whatnot, what they're really looking for, right-handed, size, the ability to skate, plays a physical game, but he's not like overly physical, but he is like physical enough at the NHL level. Like I kind of look at Granz as like, is that like the guy that maybe is even a dark horse to make the team to start the year? Because I could see the organization being higher on him than Juleson like today, right now. I mean, he's bigger, he's a better skater, and he's already been developing here and already showed that he fit right into the NHL when he was called up and got better in the AHL when he went back down. He was also their best defender in the AHL playoffs. So I don't know. Granz is kind of my guy right now that I'm kind of eyeing up from an AHL standpoint because I can't see Oliver Bonk being,
No, definitely
rushed into
not.
the NHL like this year. I just
That
think
would
he,
be a mistake from a development standpoint if you're going to rush a guy that, has only really played in junior, hasn't really played professionally yet. I just think not you probably think the exact same thing. So yeah. I would say that at least for my call-ups, like if you look at it, like I agree with Grons. I think like he could get called up midway through the season at some point, or like if somebody gets hurt, for example. I think you have to factor in like next season he has the one-way deal, so they're slowly moving him along to eventually be on the NHL team. So I think it would naturally make sense that he gets more games this season at some point. Like I think Andre might make the team, in my
yeah,
opinion. Like I think
yeah,
he was close
same.
last season. So, for me, Andre, if he makes the team, wouldn't be surprised. But if not, then he's probably that guy on defense if somebody gets hurt. Like he's the initial call up. It makes the most sense, I would imagine. And then for the forwards, like I think Gurbankin has a chance to maybe make the team on the fourth line. I feel like he was really good in the AHL playoffs. I think he has a chance. I think Barkey, even though a lot of people would like to see him, and see what he might do, I just think the fact that he's so small, like the AHL just makes the most sense for him in his first pro season, right? Another dark horse though is Dorwart, like especially too if there's any
Yeah.
injuries with center. I just think they played him last season in a fourth line role. I think he would be like your fourth line center call up if somebody was to get hurt, or like if somebody really gets injured, maybe you know Rizzo too. Like I know he kind of missed a lot of time with the Phantoms as well last season, so I imagine they might want him to kind of play more AHL games versus get an NHL taste on the fourth line. So
Yeah. I so like I have Gendron on here. I think he's still too young and underdeveloped in the two-way sense.
I agree,
And
yeah.
I was hoping Tuamala like hopefully comes in, but the fact he didn't get called up at all last year and he was playing well offensively tells me like he might also have to work his way back in that conversation. And I actually don't completely agree on the Barkey thing. Like I don't think Barkey should be in the NHL for a significant amount of time. But part of me goes like, this guy, when he played in preseason, extended his preseason look beyond what anybody thought. He played in the middle, first of all, which I think most people didn't expect either. He played center. And I could just see like a weird world because he reminds me so much of Konechny, and Konechny made the team when like people did not think he was going to make the team, but he was just so good that everybody's like,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. And there's a difference of talent too between the two, but um, I do
See,
see him as like a dark horse type of guy to get a
I
call up.
I like Barkey. Like I think it could happen.
His
I
intensity,
just
you know?
yeah, I just think for him, like I'm looking at it like, who else would potentially get called up on the wing? Like I think Barkey could get called up if like guys like Bump or Grabenkin or something like get hurt maybe. But I just imagine like those guys would take precedence over him. Even maybe Tuamala, who's been in the AHL for a couple seasons and has kind of earned it, versus a guy that just, is entering. But
Yeah.
if he blows everybody to the water and plays really well, then
I
it's about the play on the ice, right? Like if you play well on the ice, you will earn your time. So if he comes in and plays really well, I just think those other guys have also played well too. So and they've kind of are a little older than him. So
I
yeah.
could I could just see a world where like Denver Barkey like leads the Phantoms in points this year.
I could see that. Yeah, it's possible.
And if he does that, and again, he is a very intense hockey player. He's not a perimeter guy. You know what I mean?
He gets into the high danger
Yeah.
areas and the
I can't
greasy
see him
areas.
playing
So
like 40 games in the NHL or something like that this
like
upcoming
10
year.
games maybe or something.
Yeah, or even just getting 2 or 3 games, just like, oh, we need a guy for like this road trip or whatever. And we're just going to give it to him because he's
I
been
could
so
see
good at the
that, or
AHL
I could
level.
see like more near the end of the season.
Or even, yeah,
I just
yeah.
think if you're looking at like, oh, okay, somebody got hurt, who should we call up? Like Grabenkin's in the minors, or we have Barkey. Like, I mean, they're probably gonna pick Grabenkin over him, I would imagine.
I think it depends on the role, but like if it's a fourth line role, I can't see them calling up Barkey.
And that's what kind of what I mean, where it's like
Gabrankin for sure.
these
Yeah.
other guys that are on the list might have more versatility in the sense that the Flyers don't want to put Barkey in a fourth line role, but they might not give a fuck to put Grabenkin or Dorwart or like
Yeah.
one of those other guys in there is what I mean, right?
Yeah, and we also have the thing where like we have Rodrigo Abels, who's still with the team. We have Gaucher, is still kind of in that mix, and he's not old. He's like 25.
Yeah.
And Rodrigo Abels was good, so like I'm kind of expecting him. And then there's also Nick Delorier, who will probably be in the NHL. And like, are they going to call in a kid to like play over D'Lo? Where like they respect him too much and like him too much as a person to really just like bench him for like 40 games in a row, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
So there is kind of like this whole balance thing. So I think we're gonna have to see what ultimately comes there. From the goaltending standpoint, I would not expect like a guy like Bjarnason to get a call up at any point. This year, it's
I mean,
possible.
the only guy I think will be Fedotov, and that
Fedotov,
will be at the case of an injury
yes.
because I don't think they will pull him up, even if he like has amazing numbers in the
Well,
AHL.
they should be if he. Let me go back to what you said. If he does have amazing numbers in the AHL, I think there should be some curiosity because again, he was an old rookie, but he was a rookie in the NHL, and you still have that monster 1 year deal for a guy playing in the minors. That if you could showcase him a little bit, and he does have some talent, there's an opportunity to move him. If
Yeah.
he does have that too, I don't think he's going to replace Vladar or Airson
No,
or
no, no.
something.
I just mean in the sense
But
that, like, I think even if he has really good numbers, they won't call him up to like replace the Vladar. I think the only way he's going to replace anybody is if either somebody stinks, like is actively
like real
bad, like,
bad,
well,
yeah.
like he's posting like a not. Let's put the scenario like he's posting a 925 save percentage in the AHL and like a 250 goals against or something. That's pretty good. That's really good, right?
Hmm.
Especially considering what he was doing last season. That'd be like a night and day turnaround.
Right.
So you firstly have to think that he can even be capable of doing that. That's the big
Well,
number one question. It's possible, but we don't
he did
know
in
at
the
this
K.
age.
I
Yeah, we
agree,
don't
but
we
he
don't know at this level. But anyway, so we'll see. And so if he has to be doing that, and then Vladar or Urs have to be putting like, sub like 870 or something, like
sure,
really
yeah,
bad.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
somebody has to just get hurt, right? So
yeah, yeah. Well, I just he was a good KHL goalie, and he had and again the numbers are skewed because the KHL is like better goaltending numbers in general because of the amount of shots from the angle and
yeah.
distance. But there is a world where like his numbers are good in the AHL because that is the level that he has excelled in the past, right? AHL and KHL is pretty comparable. It's the NHL that's the huge,
Jump. Yeah.
differentiator, right? So, I'm kind of curious to see how he does, assuming he'll even go to the AHL, because apparently he wasn't aware that that could even happen when the question was brought up to him. And then we obviously have the Kolosov situation, which there is zero official statement made on that. But I think we're both in the camp that that guy is not going to be here.
Yeah,
If
I
he's
would be
here, I will be
surprised.
very surprised.
I would be
Yeah.
surprised. I'd be surprised if we ever see him in the NHL again in general. So
I think if he goes back to Russia, I think his whole approach and blame it on his team or,
it's a red flag for every team, not just the Flyers.
it was just the wrong approach. Like you should have been in the minors the whole year and potentially have been called up at the end. And
Which he would have
he
been for
didn't.
probably a handful of games if he
Yeah,
did do that.
he
So
barely played. He played like what
yeah,
20
yeah.
games last year. You know,
Not good for a young goalie's
between both
development.
levels, and didn't play in the Phantoms playoffs. Like, are you kidding me? Like, why? Why were you not playing in the playoffs for the Phantoms? Like, it didn't make any sense. And he didn't play the previous year when he came over from Russia in the playoffs either. And it's just like that would have been your best development opportunity was
Your
to
best bet.
play
Yeah.
6, 7 games in the playoffs, especially when they were down to Peterson in net, and it should have been Kolosov playing there. So like I don't know. I think he's just done. Bjarnason, it's like I think even if his numbers are really good, I just don't see the
Not
Flyers.
smart.
Yeah, it's like he's so young and you risk hurting his confidence early. And we talked about this for a while, and it's funny. I was listening to SDPN Steve Dangle podcast, and they were talking about young goalies playing in the NHL, and they're like, if you see a goal, I think they were talking about Devin Levi. No, you see a goaltender playing in the NHL like 22, they're like, that is a freak. And I just keep telling everybody what I said about Carter Hart. Like, I don't care what people's public opinions on Carter Hart and how good he was. He was a freak. There was nobody else like him that played for this organization. I still believe he's a top 10 goaltender in the NHL. I don't know. He missed some time now, so it's going to be a little different if he actually does come back to the NHL. But, like, the fact he made the NHL, was a starting
Yeah,
goaltender at
yeah.
21 or
Well,
whatever, that
goalies
is
come in at
so
25.
rare. Yes.
Goalies come in at 25,
Right.
24. They usually don't come in at 22. But yeah, I mean, it'll
And
be interesting to
Kolosov
see
was
what
23, I think.
it'll be interesting to see what happens with him when they finally do announce it, that's for sure. Or announce whatever is going
Oh, the
on.
Kolosov thing.
Yeah.
I could see there being like no announcement. And
They
it's
just
just
see
like
like, oh, he's playing in
where in,
Belarus this
yeah.
season. Yeah,
Where
maybe.
where in the world is Alexei Kolosov? Yeah. Just he shows up on Twitter playing, in another uniform. Yeah.
There you
Bjarnason is
go.
the guy where I'm like, who knows? But they brought in a bunch of other goalies. They're like pretty
Yeah, it's
prepared to
best for his
rotate guys.
development. It's best for his development just to be in the AHL, get reps, and
Yeah.
maybe next season or something.
Yeah, it's not wise. And while he was good in the WHL and played really well in the WJSS,
Yeah.
before the season started, like he didn't dominate juniors hockey to the point where you're like, oh, this guy is, he's not Zavragin or, who's been very good playing against men for the past 3 seasons. He has to adapt to that. I still like him as a prospect. I think he still has like 1B, maybe 1A, potential in him. But, you know, guys like Erson, he's still pretty young. Vladar is not like an old man, he's
Yeah, I think
27.
Arison. I think people are really down on Arison, which I
Yeah.
agree with. But that's
It's
a
crazy.
topic for another show.
Well, it's crazy because we went into last season being like he could be the MVP of the team, and then now everybody's like, I don't even know if he's a starter anymore, and it's like, I don't know. I just don't turn on players that quickly. I'm still
Well,
like,
I don't
I'm
know. For
ready to see what he
me,
does this year.
I just thought like he started off really well, in my opinion. Got that
The
injury and was never
injury,
the
yeah,
same. I think like if he is healthy, I think he's a different goalie. But that's just my
yeah.
opinion.
I no, I'm right there. I'm right there with you. I don't know if he's like a top 10 goalie or whatever
But I
like
think
that
he
in
can
him,
be
but
decent and give you
yeah,
good games.
I think he'd be a top 20 goalie in the NHL. I think he has that ability, but ability is very different than putting it all together. I mean, we've seen, injuries have been a
Yeah,
player, problem for goaltenders throughout the Flyers time period. So
it happens.
we will see. All right, that's it for this show. Anything you want to leave our audience with?
I will be on my honeymoon the next couple weeks, so you
Yeah.
will not see me, but I'll be back just in time for all the fun stuff and training camp and all that. So next time I talk to you all and you're all listening and I'm on the show, it'll be very close to hockey season, which is exciting.
Yeah, it's dope. Yeah, I'll be on here probably alone. I don't know if I even feel like scheduling like guests. I'll probably just, come on here and talk for like an hour, and just do what I do. Especially because my schedule is going to be a little crazy too. So I could just pop in, get an hour in, and then, call it a day.
Yeah.
And then we'll be back in September with a more normal schedule. And Vasili will be back, and, you know, we'll be,
Another season.
yeah, we'll be like what, 2 weeks away from training camp, I think.
Pretty much, something like
Yeah,
that.
something like that. All right. Just want to remind everybody, please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell for notification. Get notified when we release these episodes. For the audio version, go to Spotify and iTunes and give us a rating and a follow as well. If you have not done that so far and you made it this far in this episode, please do those. Give us the like, give us a subscribe. Go give us ratings on the audio version and follow us there. All that stuff. Again, all of that tremendously helps us grow as a show. So we really, really appreciate it if you have done it, and if you haven't done it, please do so. We can't thank you enough. Also, a shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks at Fourth and South. Make sure you go yourself a cheesesteak from Jim's. They have one of the best, if not the best, cheesesteak in Philadelphia. Public Summit Adjusters, 215-752-0560. Go to them for your insurance adjustment needs. It will help facilitate the process between you and your insurance company, and make sure you get the best claim possible. And also shout out to sportspider.com. They are our partners. They aggregate content from all over the internet, all sports content, on their Flyers page. We are always pinned at the top because we're their partners. So as soon as we write something, you will see it at the very top of the page. So make sure to check them out. There's the link available both in the video and the audio version of this podcast in the description. Again, that's sportspider.com. And also make sure to check out flyersnittygritty.com. We never say that, but probably should. All right. Thank you everybody for listening. Thank you, Vasili, for being awesome. We love you guys. And remember, always stay